Hello everyone, how's it going? Kickstarting our Whisky for Dummies series with a whiskey curious and enthusiastic member from our community. And to kickstart this Whisky for Dummies series, our first dummy, aka Bakra, is Lara. Thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you. Okay, so tell me, what exactly is whiskey?
Whiskey, if I have to put it simply, is a distilled spirit made from grain, water, and yeast. And also importantly, it requires some time to mature. Wow. So time is also an important element.
Which are the grains used in whiskey?
The grain could be anything ranging from malted barley to rye to rice to corn, oats. So it could be anything. Obviously, malted barley is predominantly used in Scotland. Corn is used a lot in US. So it's like a lot of bourbons are made out of, bourbon predominantly is 51% corn, so yeah.
So are all whiskies made in Scotland?
Not really. While yes, Scotland is the most prominent country when it comes to whiskey making, but there are about 5 big or biggies in the whiskey world. Scotland, US, Ireland, Canada, Japan. So these are the 5 most prominent countries. However, now whiskey is being made across the world. You have I think Denmark has about 40 odd distilleries. A small country like Denmark, there's whiskey being made in Sweden, Taiwan, of course, closer home in India as well. You have whiskey distilleries popping up every other month.
So what exactly is Scotch?
For a whiskey to be called Scotch, it has to follow the strict guidelines laid down by the Scotch Whisky Association. And some of the key guidelines are, it has to be bottled, distilled and mature in Scotland. It has to be matured for a minimum of 3 years in oak barrels. It has to be bottled at a minimum ABV of 40% or strength of 40%. You're not allowed to add any flavoring or additives to the whiskey.
So how is whiskey spelled? W-H-I-S-K-Y or W-H-I-S-K-E-Y?
So whiskey made in US and Ireland usually is spelled with an E, while whiskies made in Scotland, Japan, Canada, India, Australia, they're spelled without an E. However, there are certain brands of American whiskies, Bourbon and Tennessee, both that are spelled without an E. For example, Maker's Mark doesn't have an E. Old Forester doesn't have an E. George Dickel doesn't use an E. So, and also the spelling of the whiskey with E in US also has to do a bit with the settlers from Ireland or who moved from Ireland to US. So they just continued using the same spelling as it was used in Ireland.
Oh, that's nice to know. So tell me, what is bourbon?
Bourbon, again, similar to Scotch, has very strict rules or regulations around it. For a whiskey to be called bourbon, it can be made only in US. While even though most of the bourbon comes from state of Kentucky, it has to have minimum 51%. The mash bill has to have corn. Rest of it could be anything in any proportion. Could be rye, oats, wheat, malted barley, whatever. So, and again, it has to be matured or aged in new charred oak barrels.
Okay, and what about the bottling? So like Scotch, do they have to be bottled in America as well?
Yeah, of course, everything. So maturation, right from distilling, maturing and bottling has to happen in US.
And is Jack Daniels a bourbon as well?
No, Jack Daniels is not a bourbon. Jack Daniels is a Tennessee whiskey, and the difference between bourbon and Tennessee is a very fine process to make a Tennessee whiskey. You follow exactly the same steps that are involved in making a bourbon. However, for Tennessee whiskeys, there is an additional step called Lincoln County process. The Lincoln County process is unique to Tennessee whiskeys. Lincoln County is a process where the new distillate from the stills is filtered through the maple charcoal chips, which is a step additional to what is used in making a bourbon.
Thanks for answering all my questions, Vinayak. Now one last one. As a whiskey enthusiast or a person who wants to begin drinking whiskeys, how should I begin my journey?
There are no right or wrong way to start a whiskey journey. And so for anyone who's starting their whiskey journey, again, drawing from my personal experience, I would recommend to start with whiskeys that are slightly milder on the flavor profile, not strong and overpowering. So like a very classic space cider, stick to the 40% ABV. Start with the lower ABV whiskey. So the lowest that you will have any which ways is a 40% ABV whiskey. and then gradually move on to the higher ABVs like 43, 46, 50, and then move on to the cask strength whiskeys. So, but stay away from anything that is very strong in terms of the strength and flavor profile. Like, don't go for a heavily sherried whiskey or a heavily peated whiskey. Stay with the milder and more easily palatable flavor profiles. And also, I think another way to look at whiskeys or how to start your whiskey journey is also think of flavors that you like. For example, let's say there are whiskeys that will have flavors of nuts. There will whiskeys that will have flavors of tropical fruits. Whiskeys that will have flavors of green apple, peaches, plums, vanilla, brown sugar, dark chocolate, white chocolate, milk chocolate. You know, go for whiskeys that you feel have flavors that you would like, and then you experiment.
Thanks, Vinayak. Thanks for all this information. I hope I can put it to use soon.
Glad. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.